As HMS Queen Elizabeth entered the contested South China Sea, a Chinese warship suddenly shadowed the British carrier. What led to this tense standoff? Could this encounter have sparked a larger conflict? And what are the possible outcomes? In the summer of 2021, the HMS Queen Elizabeth ventured on its highly anticipated maiden deployment as the centerpiece of the United Kingdom's Carrier Strike Group, or CSG. This deployment marked a significant moment in British naval history, representing not only the UK's return to aircraft carrier operations after a decade, but also a clear statement of intent regarding its global military capabilities. As part of this mission, the HMS Queen Elizabeth was scheduled to sail through some of the world's most strategically vital and contested waters, including the South China Sea. The South China Sea, a sprawling maritime region in Southeast Asia, is one of the most critical waterways on the planet. It serves as a major maritime corridor through which approximately one-third of the world's global shipping passes, accounting for trillions of dollars in trade each year. The Sea's vast underwater reserves of oil, and natural gas further amplify its strategic importance, making it a focal point of geopolitical tensions. However, the South China Sea is not merely a global trade route or a resource area. It is also a region marked by intense territorial disputes. Several countries, including Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan, lay claim to various parts of the sea, yet it is China's exp of claim, illustrated by the so-called N line, that has sparked the most significant controversies and confrontations. This line, which encompasses roughly 90% of the South China Sea, is based on historical maps that China uses to justify its claim, though it has been widely rejected by the international community, including a 2016 ruling by the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, as the HMS Queen Elizabeth and its accompanying vessels enter this contentious environment. The presence of a Chinese Type 52D destroyer shadowing the British fleet added a significant dose of tension. The Type 52 destroyer, also known as the Luoyang 3 class, is an intimidating warship and one of the most advanced surface combatants in the People's Liberation Army Navy, or plan. Launched in the early 2010s, the Type 52D presents a significant leap in Chinese naval capabilities, featuring state-of-the-art radar systems, vertical launch systems for missiles, advanced anti-aircraft and anti-submarine weapons, and cutting-edge electronic warfare suites. The sighting of the Type 52D destroyer trailing the British fleet was a clear indication that China was closely monitoring the movements of the HMS Queen Elizabeth and her escort ships. Given the strategic significance of both the South China Sea and the British carrier, the shadowing operations was a demonstration of China's intent to assert its presence and maintain surveillance over what it considers a crucial area of its national interest. But the thing is that this encounter, while dramatic, was not entirely unexpected. The South China Sea has long been a flash show for military encounters between Chinese and Western naval forces. These waters have seen a steady increase in nearby maneuver standoffs and the use of military signaling as both sides assert their rights and challenge each other's claims. However, the presence of the HMS Queen Elizabeth, a symbol of the UK's renewed global military reach, escalated the situation. The British fleet, with its flagship aircraft carrier at the helm, represented a strong reminder of Western naval power and a direct challenge to China's dominance in the region. For China, shadowing the British fleet with a Type 25 destroyer was a calculated move. It served multiple purposes: gathering intelligence on the capabilities of the HMS Queen Elizabeth and its strike group, demonstrating China's readiness to defend its claims in the South China Sea, and sending a clear message to the international community about China's stance on foreign military operations in what it considers its territorial waters. The shadowing of the HMS Queen Elizabeth by a Chinese destroyer in the South China Sea was more than just a routine naval encounter. It marked the beginning of a high-stack standoff between two formidable naval powers. Diplomatic exchanges and public statements, the war of words in the aftermath of the encounter. The diplomatic machinery of both the United Kingdom and China shifted into high gear. The incident required careful handling as the potential for escalation was significant. Both nations issued public statements that were carefully crafted to assert their respective positions without pushing the situation toward open conflict. The United Kingdom's position, upholding freedom of navigation. The UK's response to the incident was swift and firm the British government emphasized that the HM Queen Elizabeth deployment was in full compliance with international law, particularly the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNOS, which guarantees the right to freedom of navigation in international waters. The UK framed the passage of its carrier strike group through the South China Sea as a legitimate exercise in this right and a demonstration of its commitment to maintaining a rules-based international order. The UK's messaging also highlighted the broader strategic context of the deployment. Since leaving the European Union, the UK has sought to redefine its role on the global stage with a particular emphasis on the Indo-Pacific region. The HMS Queen Elizabeth's maiden voyage was a key component of this global Britain strategy, which aims to project British influence far beyond its traditional spheres of operation. By sending its flag aircraft carrier into the Indo-Pacific, the UK was signaling its intent to play a more active role in the security dynamics of the region. Alongside traditional allies like the US and new strategic partners such as Japan, Australia, and India, British officials, including the Foreign Secretary and the Defence Secretary, made public statements underscoring the UK's resolve to support a free and open Indo-Pacific. They framed the HMS Queen Elizabeth's presence in the South China Sea as a contribution to the regional stability and a counterbalance to any attempts to undermine international law. The UK's messaging was clear: the deployment was not directed at any single nation, but was part of a broader effort to uphold the principles of freedom of navigation and overflight, which are vital for global trade and security. China's response, defending sovereignty and regional stability. China's response to the incident was equally resolute, but took a very different tone. The Chinese government condemned the presence of the British fleet in what it considers its territorial waters, reiterating its long-standing claims over the South China Sea. Beijing accused the UK of engaging in provocative actions that threaten regional stability and challenge China's sovereignty. The Chinese government statements emphasize that the South China Sea is a core national interest, and any foreign military presence in the area is viewed as a direct challenge to Chinese territorial integrity. Chinese officials and state-run media outlets framed the shadowing of the HMS Queen Elizabeth by the Type 52D destroyer as a necessary measure to protect China's sovereignty and safeguard regional peace. In addition to the official statements, Chinese state media played a significant role in shaping public perception of the incident. Outlets like the Global Times, known for their nationalistic tone, portrayed the British deployment as an unnecessary provocation and a relic of colonialism. The HMS Queen Elizabeth was depicted as a symbol of the UK's attempts to assert influence in a region where it no longer holds any legitimate stake. The narrative was clear: China would not tolerate any interference in its backyard and was fully prepared to defend its interests. Electronic warfare and intelligence gathering. The silent battle. While the diplomatic exchange played out in the public eye, a more covert and sophisticated aspect of the encounter was unfolding behind the scenes. The shadowing of the HMS Queen Elizabeth by the Chinese destroyer was not just a matter of one ship following another. It involved a complex and high-stakes exchange of electronic signals, intelligence gathering, and strategic posturing. This silent battle was crucial in determining the balance of power during the standoff and had significant implications for both sides. So what happened next? Well, electronic warfare, or EW, is a critical component of modern naval operations, especially in a region as strategically vital and contested as the South China Sea. Both the HMS Queen Elizabeth and the Chinese destroyer are equipped with advanced EW systems designed to detect, jam, and counter electronic signals from enemy vessels. These systems include radar communications and electronic countermeasures, all of which play a major role in modern naval engagements. During the encounter, the Chinese destroyer likely employed its EU capabilities to gather detailed intelligence on the British fleet. This would have included monitoring the HMS Queen Elizabeth's radar emissions, communications, and other electronic signals to build a comprehensive picture of its operations and capabilities. The Chinese warship's radar systems, which are designed to track multiple targets over long distances, would have been trained on the British fleet, providing valuable data on the movements and the formations of the ships. At the same time, the British fleets would not have remained passive. The HMS Queen Elizabeth, as the centerpiece of the carrier strike group, is equipped with some of the most advanced electronic warfare systems in the world. Its artisan radar, for example, is capable of tracking more than 900 targets simultaneously and is highly resistant to jamming and other electronic attacks the British fleet likely engaged. Its own intelligence-gathering activities, including using its EW systems to monitor the Chinese destroyer movements, communications, and electronic emissions. This exchange of electronic signals was a critical aspect of the standoff, as both sides sought to gain the upper hand without resorting to open confrontation. In addition to electronic warfare, the encounter between the HMS Queen Elizabeth and the Chinese destroyer also involved extensive surveillance and intelligence-gathering operations. Both sides would have deployed a range of assets, including drones, helicopters, and possibly even subs, to monitor each other's activities and gather vital intelligence. The British fleet, for instance, includes a range of surveillance assets that are critical for maritime operations. These likely included Merlin helicopters equipped with advanced radar and sonar systems, and possibly unmanned aerial vehicles for extended range reconnaissance. These assets would have been used to track the Chinese destroyer movements and gather intelligence on its capabilities. Similarly, the Chinese warship would have employed its own surveillance system to monitor the British fleet. The Type 52 destroyer is equipped with sophisticated radar and sonar systems, as well as WAVs, which would have been used to gather detailed information on the HMS Elizabeth's operations. This intelligence-gathering mission would have been crucial for the Chinese Navy, as it provided valuable data on the capabilities and the tactics of one of the world's most advanced aircraft carriers. The surveillance and intelligence-gathering operations conducted by both sides were a key component of the standoff. These activities allowed each side to assess the other's capabilities and intentions, providing critical information that could be used in future encounters. Also, do you think it might be possible that these kinds of encounters evolve into something far more gruesome? Drop us your thoughts in the comments down below. Anyhow, the encounter between the Queen Elizabeth and the Chinese destroyer cannot be viewed in isolation. It is part of a more overall geopolitical struggle for influence in the Indo-Pacific region. As China continues to rise as a global power, its ambitions are increasingly clashing with those of established powers like the US and its allies. The South China Sea, with its strategic importance and contested territories, has become a key battleground in the struggle for influence, where the stakes are not just regional but global. But there's also another thing we should consider here. The UK's deployment of the HMS Queen Elizabeth into the Indo-Pacific was a significant moment in the country's post-Brexit foreign policy. After leaving the European Union, the UK has sought to redefine its role on the global stage, with a particular focus on the Indo-Pacific, a region that's expected to drive much of the world's economic growth in the coming decades. The deployment of the HMS Queen Elizabeth was a clear signal that the UK intends to play a more active role in the security dynamics of this region. You see, the carrier strike group's journey through the South China Sea was part of an effort to strengthen ties with key regional allies, including Japan, Australia, and India. These countries share concerns about China's growing assertiveness in the region, and the UK's deployment was seen as a demonstration of solidarity and a commitment to collective security. By operating in the South China Sea, the UK was also aligning itself with the United States, which has consistently challenged China's claims in the region through its own freedom of navigation operations. The UK's involvement in the Indo-Pacific is also motivated by economic considerations. The region is home to some of the world's fastest-growing economies, and the UK is keen to establish stronger trade and investment ties with these countries. The HMS Queen Elizabeth deployment was accompanied by a series of diplomatic economic initiatives aimed at deepening the UK's engagement with the Indo-Pacific. These included high-level visits, trade discussions, and efforts to strengthen bilateral ties with regional key players. The shadow of the Queen Elizabeth by Chinese warship in the South China Sea ended without immediate confrontation, but the tense encounter could have unfolded in several more volatile ways. Each potential scenario carries significant implications for regional stability and global security, stressing the fragile nature of these naval interactions in such a strategically sensitive area. One of the most plausible and dangerous scenarios during such shadowing operations is a near collision between the involved ships. Naval vessels operating in close proximity, particularly under high tension, face the constant risk of miscalculation or human error, leading to a near or even a collision. In such an event, both sides would likely accuse the other of aggressive behavior, triggering an instant and quick escalation of tensions. A near collision between the Queen Elizabeth and a Chinese destroyer could have quickly led to a diplomatic crisis with intense media scrutiny and public outcry in both the UK and China. This situation would put immense pressure on both governments to respond decisively, possibly leading to an increase in military deployments in the region. Other Western powers might join the UK in a show of solidarity, further worsening tensions and increasing the risk of a broader military confrontation in the South China Sea. Another grave possibility could have been an unplanned engagement between the British-Chinese forces in such high-tension situations. Even minor provocations or perceived threats could lead to one side deciding to open fire. This could happen if, for example, the Chinese destroyer misinterpreted a maneuver by the British fleet as a hostile action, or if the British forces felt threatened by the Chinese ship's closeness. An exchange of fire, even if limited, would have serious consequences. It could trigger a full-blown military crisis with both sides quickly mobilizing additional forces to the area. The incident would also demand urgent diplomatic intervention from the international community to prevent the situation from spiraling into a larger conflict. However, the damage to bilateral relations and regional stability would be severe, with long-lasting repercussions for global security dynamics. And guess what? There are other possible ending scenarios for this sort of encounter. What we're trying to say here is that in today's interconnected world, conflicts are no longer confined to physical engagement. A potential scenario could easily involve a cyber attack initiated by either the Chinese warship or the British fleet. Such an attack might target the opponent's electronic systems, such as radar communications or weapon systems, aiming to disable or disrupt them. A successful cyber attack could significantly alter the balance of power during the encounter, giving one side a strategic advantage. However, it would also raise the stakes considerably, as the attacked side might feel compelled to retaliate in kind, leading to an escalation that could extend beyond the immediate area of conflict. Each of these scenarios, whether a near collision, an unplanned engagement, or a cyber attack, stresses the precarious state of naval encounters in the South China Sea. The potential for miscalculation or intentional provocation to trigger broader conflict is a constant risk, particularly in a region as strategically important and contested as this. So do you think that the future of this region is bright or not? Let us know in the comments. If you liked our video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.